Today's podcast is brought to you by Chikara Wrestle Factory, 4711 Wingate Street, Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, where they specialize in lucha libre, porosu, European, British, and German styles, mixed martial arts, and American pro wrestling, all built into the curriculum at the Wrestle Factory, where they strive to create the most well-rounded performers active today. Hey, yo, Fro Wrestling Podcast listeners, help us out. Click the subscribe button now to show your support. Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 49 of the Fro Wrestling Podcast. This episode, we've got a ton of stuff to cover. We got Raw, we got Smackdown, we got news and rumors, independent stuff, new recommendations for our diehard fans who are looking for more action. We got so much to cover, such limited time. I feel like I'm the Willy Wonka in the Chocolate Factory. So much to do, so little time. So, let's get started right away with today's news. It is official that WWE has offered contracts to the Hardys. This is not some speculation anymore. It's now documented. And it looks as though it is almost a foregone conclusion that the Hardys will be at some point very soon headed back to WWE. Now, if their contracts with Ring of Honor, the short-term deals that they spoke of, do actually run out on April 1st, that would free them up to be able to appear at WrestleMania. That is huge. Now we know that the offer's been made. There is so much there, and we know last week it was in the news that Vince McMahon was not happy with creative, that they didn't come up with something more substantial for the New Day at the pay-per-view. So this gives an opportunity. I'm really hoping they book the New Day and the Hardys at WrestleMania, totally unannounced, unpromoted, just to make it more organic, make it more real. This is very exciting for me. I'm a huge fan of the Hardys, have been for tons of years now. I'm a huge fan of the New Day, and I would love to see these two teams get in a ring. And for the Hardys, what a year. Just going on this quest for the gold and every other thing, how they really went roughshod through TNA. Impact defeated just about everybody there, go around all these other communities, taking championships everywhere, and now you've got an opportunity to, within a 2-month period, go to Ring of Honor, take their titles, come to WWE, and face the New Day. What an incredible storyline that has been built into this. Moving on from there, Raw was awesome this week. And I say that for a couple reasons. There was a lot of things going on, but I think there's some stuff for the future that I think they could really work with. And there's some things that they did that weren't necessarily the most exciting, but I love the way they booked things this week. Heading into WrestleMania season, you got to find a way to get people excited about, not just the storylines, but we've got so many smart marks out there now. The people listen to this podcast, the places I go to find my information. We are all doing so much to stay up on what's going on in the world of wrestling. It's hard to keep results and predictions quiet anymore. So for WWE to make it feel as fresh as they did this week, following up last week's relatively successful episode, this was a good show. It started off with Mick Foley in the ring. This is where he's reading from note cards, talking about how he's going to take a leave of absence, and then he gets all frustrated. He tears the cards up, and he starts going off about he's Mick frickin' Foley and all this. Steph coming out and them having their back and forth argument. Her firing Mick Foley, which we all have been anticipating because he's got to go have the surgery, and we know they got to make room for Kurt Angle at some point because we all firmly believe Kurt Angle will be the new general manager on Raw. So she fires him. Sami Zayn comes out, who has done nothing substantial lately, and this was perfect. He came out and he got to get involved with Stephanie McMahon. I did not like the way she buried his reputation, talking about how he's not on a level where he should even be speaking to her, but at the end of the day, it was okay to build him in this way because it does set him up to be one of the next guys to really challenge the authority, and I hope that they push that and move that forward. The only problem I have is Samoa Joe came out, and it looked like Joe's going to get involved for a minute. She called him off, and then she books the match with Sami Zayn against Samoa Joe, which is fine, except you had Samoa Joe choke him out to the coquina clutch again. This match should have had a schmaz ending. This match should not have ended clean because it made Sami Zayn look really strong before the match, and then after the match, he looks like it was all for nothing. It looks like he was just, another wrestler being fed to Samoa Joe. If you're going to build Sami Zayn to ever have a potential run with the world title, which, let's face it, the guy deserves that at some point, you gotta start having him have either wins over or impressive showings versus different top guys. And when you got him going against Samoa Joe every week and just getting obliterated, that doesn't do anything to build his character reputation. They need to work on that. Foley's in the back in the next segment. He's saying goodbye to all the talents. Sheamus, Cesaro, those people, Sami Zayn. Bayley gives him a hug, and then he runs into Triple H, who tells him to have a nice day. I thought that was actually a good part. I like the way they ended that. Even though we know it's theatric, it was still very real. It had a real emotional feel to it. They had an interview segment with Kevin Wilk, who is the guy who does the surgery on Seth Rollins' knee, and he does this whole thing where he says that he can't and no other doctor will clear Seth Rollins for WrestleMania. This is clearly a work, and it's there for a reason. One of two things is going to happen here. Either Seth Rollins really can't go, and they'll surprise us with Finn Balor instead, or Seth can go, and they use this angle so that you could build up for what they did later in the evening, which we'll get to in a little bit. Charlotte defeats Dana Brooke in what to me was a surprise. I would not have rushed into this match yet. Dana Brooke has done nothing of significance, and then last week she looked amazing taking down Charlotte. When they announced this match and brought these two to the ring, I was like, oh my gosh, really? Already? Like, Dana Brooke needs a couple weeks to really get boosted for her to have any kind of legitimate shot at Charlotte, and in the end, she didn't. She ended up going out and getting destroyed by Charlotte. That's not how you do things. It was surprising to me, and I'm happy with the fact that they're going with that angle. I just wasn't happy with the match turnout. If you were going to do this, I would have preferred to see some way for Dana Brooke to steal a victory here to further the storyline, maybe even add her to the World Championship match at Mania with all the other girls. But that didn't happen. I'm okay with it. At least they're giving Dana Brooke something important to do, and Charlotte isn't having to get involved with Bayley right now. Let's save that for Mania. Stephanie has another segment where she's talking to Bayley about all her hugging and all that fun stuff in the back with Foley, and she's not happy with her, so she ends up making a match with her against Nia Jax later in the evening. If Nia Jax wins, she'll be added to the Women's Championship match at Mania, which we all have been expecting anyways. Then we get the highlight reel with the real Kevin Owens. This was one of the highlights of Raw this year for me, watching Jericho cut this just amazing promo, showing pictures of Kevin Owens when he was 16 years old in his Y2J shirt with a poster on the wall of Chris Jericho. It was very cool the way they did this. They showed him later on, in the interview, they showed him when they hit the music for him to come out during Fastlane and his reaction to seeing Chris Jericho walk out. This was just really well done, very artistic, and of course it ends with Kevin Owens coming up from behind and attacking Jericho and destroying the list, but it was really well booked. It was believable, it made the storyline go even further, and it really builds some intensity heading into the last 2 weeks before WrestleMania. Brian Kendrick defeats TJ Perkins in what has to be considered a worthless waste of time. 2 minutes, the match is over. These are the two guys that tore the house down for about 15-20 minutes the first time they wrestled on pay-per-view for that Cruiserweight title that Perkins won, and later on, Kendrick ends up winning the championship from Perkins in another classic battle, and now you got him beating him in 2 minutes? Like, what does that say about previous matches? Horrible that they didn't give them more time, but I understood it because they tried to pack so much into the time frame. They would go right into the next match. Nia Jax defeats Bayley again, almost like a squash match against the women's champion. I don't know why you're squashing Bayley so badly. I understand trying to keep Nia Jax, strong going into Mania. You're adding her to the women's championship match with this victory. I get all that. I'm okay with all that. But it didn't have to be just utter obliteration again. Hits the Samoan drop for the pin and all that. Do something different. Keep Bayley looking strong too. Like, they make Bayley look like the underdog and she's the women's champion. They have a segment where Triple H addresses Seth Rollins, and this is what ties into the interview earlier in the evening when they talk about how he's not going to get medically cleared to participate, and Triple H instead throws out a challenge for a non-sanctioned match against Seth Rollins at Mania. This should have been done by Seth Rollins, not Triple H. Seth Rollins is the protagonist. Seth Rollins is the one who's hungry. He's the one who has done everything. He has nothing left to lose. So why is Triple H the one throwing out the challenge? Triple H should have been the one who was arrogant and came out and accepted the challenge, and then hopefully they can face off at Mania. I'm okay with the booking. Triple H is great on the mic. This was a cool segment. I just wish they would have role reversed there and let Seth Rollins be the one throwing down the challenge. Handicap tag team match. The Cesaro and Sheamus got a little heat from Stephanie McMahon, and they were told they had to win tonight's match again in order to keep their spot at Mania in the triple threat for the tag titles. Of course, when Enzo and Cass come out, Gallows and Anderson attack them. There's a whole melee, and they're supposed to be on the same team. It ends up, this is another like 2-minute match, where when they finally get somebody in the ring, Anderson's in the ring, and he ends up getting beat relatively quickly. So, Cesaro and Sheamus, they'll still be in the tag team championship match at Mania. I expected it to be that way. This is another one of those matches where I don't know why they booked it, but it still went down pretty cool, seeing the team that's supposed to be working together, beating the snot out of each other. It built some excitement for the tag title match. I don't know, I would have given them a little bit more time and actually let them argue with each other about not tagging each other in a little bit and made the match have a little more drama before you had them full on brawl with each other. But again, they were really trying to pack a lot into these episodes. You have the New Day hyping WrestleMania in a backstage segment. I like the fact that Big E took a shot at Xavier Woods. Is there anything you want to tell us? Obviously referencing his video situation from earlier in the week. We're not going to go down that road again. Let's just say I found that to be humorous, that WWE poked fun at it, especially since it was later reported that there was a closed-door backstage meeting about how to handle the Paige Xavier Woods situation. We'll have to wait and see how that happens, but the general consensus is it sounds like there's not going to be any punishment, and there shouldn't be. So we'll move on from there. Austin Aries is going to defeat Tony Nese with his spinning elbow. I always forget what he calls that thing, but whatever. He defeats Tony Nese. He has to stay super strong going in against Neville at WrestleMania. And then we get to our main event, Braun Strowman versus Roman Reigns. Decent match, kind of rushed, but it was believable. It didn't make Braun look weak. It looked like he was a solid competitor. He is someone who I think when Goldberg loses the Universal title to Brock Lesnar, he is someone I think you can build to face Brock Lesnar for that title. Now, my only concern with that is that they want to build Brock up to be this unstoppable force leading up to the match with Roman Reigns next year's WrestleMania. And how do you do that when you got somebody like Braun Strowman out there? I mean, let's face it, Braun Strowman is looking tough right now. And I would book him harder than worrying about this fantasy match next year we have Brock and Reigns again. They really got to get over this shoving Reigns down our throat thing. The end of the match sees Roman Reigns getting ready to spear Braun Strowman after a Superman punch. The bell tolls, the lights go out, the Undertaker's in the ring. He choke slams Braun Strowman and then turns around and eats a spear from Roman Reigns. Now, that's fine. That's how they end the show. That is not what my concern is. If anybody watches the match really closely, watch The Undertaker after he delivers the choke slam. He is grimacing. It looks like in severe pain. He's already limping and he hasn't even taken the spear yet. All he did was turn around and give a choke slam, and he looked like he was having a tough time standing. So I'm a little concerned about how long the match will go at Mania, because I think if you give him too short a period of time, people are going to be very upset. They want to see The Undertaker in potentially his last match have a long and fulfilling match, and I just don't see that happening. He looked very much in pain in this segment. We're going to go away from Raw for a second before we get to SmackDown. Jim Cornette officially announced as the inductor for the Rock and Roll Express. That's huge since Cornette adamantly hates WWE. In additional WWE news, WWE is now open apparently to more dates with Goldberg. We thought this was going to be over after Survivor Series, then we thought maybe the Royal Rumble, then we got the match at Mania, and now they're saying they may bring him back for special attraction matches for who knows how many appearances. And he's so over, and Vince is so happy with his production, and the whole production team is very excited with his reaction from the crowd. Why not book him some more? Absolutely. This is a hot commodity. People want to see it. Give him what they want. And if Goldberg's willing to do it, he's in phenomenal shape. Absolutely go for it. On a WWE-related note, something that is actually somewhat frustrating to me, Road Warrior Animal comes out, and he has an article published this week where he's talking about how he feels bad for Paul Ellering. Paul Ellering now managing the Authors of Pain in NXT, and talking about how, they're not the Road Warriors, and if he's their manager, they're always going to be compared and things like that. I get that, but at the end of the day, only a couple years ago, when they brought up Connor and Victor, Road Warrior Animal was very much angry because he thought that he had apparently made a pitch to Triple H or somebody in creative about him being a manager for that team because they had so much similarity to the Road Warriors. So it was good enough for him to do, but now that Paul Ellering's doing it, somehow he feels bad because the Authors of Pain are going to be compared to the Road Warriors, but the Ascension weren't going to be. It's hypocritical. He was begging for a job when the Ascension got promoted to the main roster, and he didn't get it, and he's bitter. That's why he's complaining about Paul Ellering now. And, Road Warrior Animal, I have nothing but respect for his career and his legacy in wrestling. He and Hawk are easily one of the top teams in the history of pro wrestling. But if you're done wrestling yourself, move on, because the Authors of Pain, he said they were green and they're not ready and this and that. Neither were the Road Warriors when they were first put together, and Paul Ellering led them too. People constantly complain in every one of the documentary and DVDs that the Road Warriors were so green, they would legitimately beat the snot out of people because they didn't know how to work yet. Now, of course, they became refined and amazing talents, but the Authors of Pain are no different. They're green, they'll get better, but they've got an amazing manager leading the way for them. Vince McMahon today was in a car accident. I'm just throwing this out there because I found it to be humorous to me. He was about a mile from WWE headquarters in Stamford, and his Bentley got in a car accident, and there's pictures of him online. He looks all flustered and angry. Apparently he was at the wheel, so whatever happened, I'm sure he was a part of it. And it looked like the front end of his car was all smashed up. So hopefully he's okay. No lingering issues heading into WrestleMania, but Very shocking to see that Vince was driving himself around town. You would think the guy would have had a limo and somebody taking care of him. But whatever. Eric Bischoff has been announced to officially induct Diamond Dallas Page into the Hall of Fame. I really expected that to happen. Bischoff has had a pretty good working relationship with WWE throughout the years. He's done several projects with them. He was on JBL's interview segment show last year, Legends with JBL, and he did a great job for them there. So I had no doubt in my mind Eric Bischoff would be the perfect guy for Diamond Dallas Page, especially considering their history going all the way back to the AWA. In other major promotion news, Conan is really not happy. He just did the deal with his Crash Wrestling in Mexico, making a deal with Impact Wrestling, and now Impact Wrestling has announced they made a deal with AAA, who Conan has a huge issue with. However, he did confirm that despite the fact that he's angry, the Impact partnership with Crash, including their talent like Laredo Kid and Garza Jr., will still be featured on Impact Wrestling. So this will not change the fact that his talent will be appearing on Impact Wrestling, but he has promised that he won't have anything to do with AAA. He doesn't want anything to do with them. Very bad history with them. In other WWE news related to WrestleMania, during WrestleMania weekend, all the WrestleMania Axess shows, they announced all the matchup lineups for their shows. Now, we had all these independent promotions. They're going to be running shows all WrestleMania weekend, but this is WWE scheduling. So, March 30th, 205 Live scheduling will be out there, and superstars from 205 Live, Rich Swann will take on the Brian Kendrick, TJ Perkins will take on Drew Gulak, and Hideo Itami and a few others will be in action. On Friday, March 31st, you'll see the people from the United Kingdom Championship Tournament, Progress Wrestling, and ICW. So you'll see Tyler Bate versus Mark Haskins in a UK Championship match. That's the first time I've seen his title is going to be defended at one of these major events. Progress champion Pete Dunne is going to take on Mark Andrews. Progress and ICW superstars like Jimmy Havoc, TK Cooper, Travis Banks, Delia Black, Tony Storm, Ginny, they'll all be competing in a WWE ring for the first time. This is just going to further the relationship between WWE and Progress and ICW. You know they're trying to book their shows on the WWE network. On Saturday, April 1st, you'll have matches for the 205 Live UK tournament people, Progress Wrestling, all thrown together. Akira Tozawa will take on Arya Davari. The Progress champion, Pete Dunne, will take on Wolfgang. The UK champion, Tyler Bate, will take on Joseph Connors in a UK championship match, provided he retains his title the night before. There'll be several other bouts on that date. Again, later on in the 1 p.m. session that day, you'll see NXT superstars. You'll see Heavy Machinery take on the Vaudevillains. Sounds like the Vaudevillains must be being sent back to NXT for some kind of revamping of their characters. Doesn't surprise me. Tino Sabatelli and Riddick Moss are going to take on the Ascension, and you'll also see people like Liv Morgan, Daria Baronato, and all the people from NXT that they're going to try to get some exposure during WrestleMania season. At the 6 o'clock session, you'll see more NXT and UK talent. Akira Tozawa will take on Steve Cutler. ICW champion Trent Seven will take on Noam Dar. And TJ Perkins and Mustafa Ali will take on Tino Sabatelli and Riddick Moss. On Sunday, April 2nd, you'll see UK Championship Tournament wrestlers, Progress Wrestling, and ICW again, with the ICW champion Trent Seven taking on Wolfgang, the UK champion Tyler Bate taking on Pete Dunne in a UK Championship match, again, provided Tyler Bate retains all weekend. Plus, Progress and ICW superstars like Mark Haskins, Jimmy Havoc, TK Cooper, Travis Banks, Delia Black, Tony Storm, and Ginny will all be appearing on April 2nd as well. Let's move on to the SmackDown results, because we are starting to go long this episode, and they love me to keep these things under a half hour. Just saying. So, SmackDown starts out with AJ Styles approaching Daniel Bryan. Apparently he has not been fired. Shane McMahon saved him from that. AJ promises he's going to be waiting for him in the parking lot. Daniel Bryan calls Shane. He warns him about that. Here comes Baron Corbin in this backstage segment, wanting to know if Dean Ambrose has accepted his challenge for WrestleMania, which Daniel Bryan claims he hasn't heard back yet. But he does, even though the whole issue is going on with Ambrose, Corbin thinks he's getting a night off. That's not happening. Daniel Bryan books him in a match against Randy Orton for later in the show. They show that Rob Gronkowski of the New England Patriots at ringside. You know he is dying to get into a WWE ring. I have a feeling at some point that will happen. The big match of the night, the Usos take on American Alpha and reclaim the tag team championship. I shouldn't say reclaim. The SmackDown Tag Team Championship is not really their thing, but they've been WWE Tag Team Champions in the past. Now, they are the SmackDown Tag Team Champions after defeating American Alpha. One of these things where American Alpha was actually hitting several moves back to back to back, and then when they were sliding into the ring, they get a double team, a super kick, and tag team titles change hands. I'm fine with that since American Alpha wasn't doing a freaking thing with them. I mean, I think since they won the championship, this was the first title defense they put on television. You know, they had that gauntlet type thing at the one pay-per-view at the Elimination Chamber, but otherwise, this is really the only significant match they've had, and they lose the title. So good. You know, if you have to, send them back to NXT or do whatever you're going to do. But if you're not going to push these guys right, don't put the titles on them. Luke Harper has a segment where he talks about Randy Orton torching Sister Abigail and how crazy it all is and how he's going to destroy Bray Wyatt next week. I'm actually looking forward to that. They've been tearing it up on the house show circuit. There's a parody episode of Total Divas with Miz and Maurice acting as if they're John Cena and Nikki Bella. Very funny stuff. Miz, the guy's solid. He really is. He's been an actor as much as he's been a wrestler his whole career, and does a pretty good job here. Randy Orton is going to defeat Baron Corbin after Dean Ambrose comes out. He's driving a forklift at the top of the entranceway. It distracts Baron Corbin just long enough for Orton to hit the RKO and pick up the win. I actually didn't like that because I think Baron Corbin needs to be booked as strong as possible if you're going to build him to be your next big monster heel. I'm still dying to see he and Braun Strowman in a match. Hopefully we'll see a little bit of that in the Andre the Giant Battle Royal. You'll see Dean Ambrose comes down to the ring. He hits Dirty Deeds on Baron Corbin and announces that he will give the Intercontinental Championship match at Mania, so that's booked. Bray Wyatt cuts a promo, as always, some more of his crazy, strange stuff. I don't need to go into all his interviews, defy logic to begin with, so he's just a unique and amazing character. I love everything he does. John Cena defeats Fandango. That you expect, but what you don't expect is at the very end, Nikki Bella puts the Fearless lock on Tyler Breeze, which I find to be so humorous. I feel bad for Tyler Breeze. His character's been totally buried for forever. Becky Lynch ends up winning by disqualification over Carmella when James Ellsworth and Natalya interfere. They get in the ring, and Natalya ends up attacking Becky Lynch. Becky Lynch is going to get the disqualification victory, but Mickie James and Alexa Bliss are going to come out. All kinds of melee and brawling going on. Alexa Bliss is the one who ends up standing tall over everybody. They have a 205 Live promo with Neville. This is like a weekly thing. It's either Neville or Austin Aries cutting a promo about 205 Live. I guess they must be the only people they think that people care to see. Whatever. A limo arrives in the back. AJ Styles is out there waiting for Shane McMahon to arrive, and instead of Shane McMahon getting out of the limo, it's Rhino and Heath Slater. And it turns out that Shane McMahon is in the ring. People are going crazy for Shane inside the arena. He calls out AJ Styles. He's in the ring. He says, "Come to the ring. I'll talk to you here." AJ comes out. He's cutting this whole thing about how he's apologizing to Shane McMahon, which the fans weren't happy about, but I thought it was very strange way to do things. And as soon as he gets in the ring, Shane just attacks him. This full-on melee back and forth, which is awesome. It culminates with Shane hitting the elbow off the turnbuckle through the announce table. What a cool way to end SmackDown. I actually really enjoyed that part of SmackDown. Most of SmackDown for me wasn't overly exciting, but that was money. I'm going to get some independent news. Pro Wrestling Guerrilla has announced they have a show coming on April 21st. They've announced the matches for the card, and it is a stacked card. Zack Sabre Jr. is going to take on Dick Togo in a non-title match. Phoenix versus Leo Rush. Keith Lee versus Jeff Cobb. Matt Riddle versus Adam Cole. Michael Elgin versus Mark Haskins. The Young Bucks versus War Machine, who are debuting for PWG. And Chuck Taylor versus Marty Scurll in a street fight. Our indie intros segment here. To get this segment started, we have 3 promotions for all the diehard fans out there. If you're looking for more action in places you've never heard of before, I've got 3 new ones for you tonight. Philippine Wrestling Revolution. Philippine Wrestling Revolution. Go to YouTube, look them up. Look up Road to Vendetta 2016. Classical Brian Leo versus Rhetoric Mahaba. Cool match. This one, their production value is a little less than Ring of Honor, but still very watchable. Very good for an independent company. They decent camera angles, and their talent is actually relatively good. You don't expect it to be WWE, but it's actually really solid, especially for people that I've never heard of myself. But I was enjoying watching their show, and now I've put that as a subscription of my own in YouTube, so I can catch their shows whenever they put them up there. The next company is Pro Wrestling Wave, which is another company out of Japan. And this one is focused on female wrestling. And if you go and do your YouTube search for Pro Wrestling Wave, Kana versus Kyoko Kimura. Kana is Asuka in NXT before she came to NXT. Check that match out. Very cool to see Asuka before she was Asuka. And our third independent promotion tonight, Great Canadian Wrestling. GCW, if you go to YouTube, do it. GCW Natalya Neidhart versus Miss Danya. Danyah. And you can see Natalya long before she was Natalya tearing it up in Great Canadian Wrestling. This day in pro wrestling history, 26 years ago, New Japan Pro Wrestling and WCW presented a show which had two different labels. It was Starrcade 1991 in the Tokyo Dome, or WCW New Japan Super Show. It saw all kinds of craziness. The Steiner brothers won the IWGP tag titles from Hiroshi Hase and Kensuke Sasaki that night. The Great Muta defeated Sting. Barry Windham and Arn Anderson defeated Masa Chono and Masa Saito. There was a dark match where Big Van Vader and Bam Bam Bigelow teamed up and they defeated Doom, Ron Simmons, and Butch Reed. That match is insane if you can find it on YouTube, which is hard to do. Very cool match. And the big match of the night was IWGP Heavyweight Champion Tatsumi the Dragon Fujinami defeated Ric Flair, the WCW World Champion, but this is when WCW was still aligned with the NWA. So in the match, the WCW World Championship was not on the line, but the NWA World Championship was. So Tatsumi Fujinami wins the NWA World Championship, but Ric Flair still has the WCW Championship. So it was considered a title versus title bout, but when Fujinami won, he didn't get the WCW belt because it wasn't a WCW championship match. It was an NWA championship match. This is why when people talk about Ric Flair being a 16-time world champion, things get weird, because there's some of these title changes like this where, yeah, it was the NWA title, not the WCW title, but did he have two championships? Because we were under the impression he only had one. So this made things really strange for a little while. A little while later, though, Tiger Hattori, the referee, he was the guy who counted the pin on Ric Flair. Ric Flair actually had gotten thrown over the top rope, and the WCW referee was saying over the top rope is a disqualification. Tiger Hattori counted a pin. There was a tussle over the belt, went all the way to the interview section, and it was just bizarre. Ric Flair ended up grabbing the WCW title and running off with it, and it led to Super Brawl, where Ric Flair regained his championship. But it's not this win here is not officially recognized as an NWA championship win by WWE or most other promotions. So interesting how that went down. 17 years ago, Taz defeated Sabu to unify the FTW and ECW title at Living Dangerously. 2 years ago, Paraguay Jr. unfortunately passed away from injuries suffered in a match where he was going in a tag team match that involved Rey Mysterio. He took the trip to the rope and then was setting it for the 619, and somehow when he fell to the rope, he must have hit wrong and snapped his neck or something, but he was unresponsive. It was a sad thing to happen to such an amazing talent. So even 2 years later, well wishes and prayers to the Aguayo family. Horrible way to lose such a great star. Our look back match for this episode, YouTube IWC Tommy Dreamer versus Rhino. This is Tommy Dreamer as the IWC champion, defending his title against Rhino. It's not an overly old match. It's actually a relatively recent match, but it's cool to see these two get in the ring because Tommy was really on a downturn in ECW when Rhino was on his upswing, and they've done matches since then, but this is kind of cool to see an independent booking of those two getting in the ring. Our fantasy booking time this episode, we've got so many matches we've been going through, and I've got so much feedback. I hope you guys are enjoying these. This episode at match 27 and 28, we've got Shinsuke Nakamura versus Jeff Jarrett, and the Great Khali versus Rey Mysterio. So make sure you go to YouTube in the comments section. Tell me who wins those matches. Today's YouTube fan poll: who has the worst moveset in all of pro wrestling? And please don't give me John Cena, because John Cena is so not the worst moveset. That's like the easy lame duck answer. Actually think about it. Who just doesn't have a moveset that matters? Who's horrible? Give that to us in the comments section along with your picks for the winners of our fantasy booking. Don't forget about the Fro Life Planning Contest. We've got that free 30-minute phone consultation out there. All you got to do is launch iTunes, go to our podcast page, subscribe, and give us a review, and then pop over to our webpage at www.frolifeplanning.com/contest and give us your email so we can get you entered in that contest to win one of those consultations. That's all the time we have for this episode. Check back with us next time. Big 50, episode 50 coming up. Special thanks as always to bensound.com, purpleplanet.com for producing our music and sound effects. We are always sponsored by Beazle Games and Sketchy People. New friend at family game night is always the fun way to go, and in this situation, bring Sketchy People. Showcase artistic talent in this new game from Beazle Games. www.thegamecrafter.com/sketchypeople. AlleyRepair.com. Call them for all of your classic skee ball, pinball, and arcade needs. Go to www.alleyrepair.com. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of the podcast. Don't forget to check out our website at www.frolifeplanning.com to see what we can do for you, for your path to higher education. Remember, Fro Life Educational Planning is for today, for tomorrow, and for life with Fro Life. I'm Fred Froelich, better known as Mr. Fro. Thank you so much for taking a few moments with us today. And if you want more news, rumors, and articles about professional wrestling, go to www.tsjsports.com/WWE for my latest articles on the world of pro wrestling. Until then, take care all.